All right. We are up and running and ready to go. So let's go ahead and switch over to the drawing stream layout. Get everything set up, and I will explain what we're going to be doing here today. First, I will turn the BGM on. I see Sourlad in chat. Sourlad says, art. Hey, Corebreak is here. What's up, Corebreak? Corebreak redeeming a drop of beat right at the beginning. Okay, well, good thing I haven't turned the BGM on yet. I guess we will do that first. Oh no, you're fine, Corey. You can redeem that whenever you want. You might as well kick things off. Of course, isn't, and then a hydrate for after. Gotcha. All right, let me see. I hadn't given much thought to beats. Seems like it's been a while since I've had to do one on the spot. But I'll freestyle something real quick. So we can also use this for a sound check. So let me know if I need to tweak anything with the audio settings as we get started here, especially once I turn the BGM on. So let's do it. All right. There's my hydrate. Let me turn on the music. We'll be listening to the BGM collection of songs for today. Of course, I've been listening to a lot of Cyberpunk Edgerunners rap today, and it's giving me Edgerunner vibes. And I've heard a lot of people talking about that show. I've heard it's pretty good. I'll have to check it out at some point. The art style, because that's a Studio Trigger animation, right? The art style looks really cool. I know there's been a lot of discussion about, I guess one of the characters is quote unquote controversial, but overall people have been saying it's a pretty neat show. Gotta check it out at some point. Alright, so what are we doing today? We are going to do something a little bit different. I have not done something like this on stream before, but we've kind of talked a little bit about the use of AI tools. In fact, one of our drawing streams was using something generated from a different program and using that as a basis for drawing concept art. And I do want to do something like that again. It was pretty fun, an interesting experiment. But today is going to be actually experimenting around with a piece of AI software for creating images. And this one is a lot more powerful than the one I used to generate those concept images before. This is a different one. You can't see it because I'm zoomed in a little bit, but this particular program is called Dream Studio AI, and it uses Stable Diffusion as its primary engine. And you can create an account here, and they give you a certain amount of points to generate stuff for free, or you could pay $10 and get a whole bunch of generation credits, as they call them. I've been messing around with this a lot, so to me, it was worth it to just throw some dollars at this, so that, especially for today, we don't have any restrictions on the stuff we can create. Core says probably Rebecca, but yeah, I haven't seen much of the show, but it is Trigger, and I love Trigger. Yeah, I think Trigger's animations are great. The kind of dynamic style and crazy like flair to their animations is one of my favorites. All right, so let me see. I had to sort of rearrange my setup for this because I'm using a browser source. This is all done in browser, and I'm on my drawing stream layout, so I just kind of resized it so that you folks could see what was actually here on screen. If you could see my cursor, this is the window where the image is going to actually generate, and that's all you really need to see. The parameters on the right are some things I'll kind of explain in a sec as far as what they affect in the drawing, but the main image will pop up here. And so if we take a look at the bottom of the input window here, we have this text box. And this functions like all of the other types of AI generation programs in that it uses these prompts of texts and parameters in conjunction with the things on the right, which we'll get to in a sec, to create the image. And the AI is going to basically pull from its databases of information it's been fed and try and create an image as close to the prompt as possible. Hey, Iconic is here. What's up, Iconic? Welcome to the stream. We are experimenting with AI for the first part here, and then for the later part, we'll probably go and mess around with some actual drawing and concept work for stuff we've done in the past. So I don't know this particular AI as well as some of the other ones that I used, but this one is fairly powerful. And so the first thing we can do as part of the experiment here, we'll put some prompts together. Actually, maybe it'd be better to demo something first, just so you folks can actually see what it looks like when you put in a series of prompts and what it spits out. This will be a demo. I was poking around on Reddit, looking at some things people have created, and one interesting prompt I got that seems to spit out some really interesting results is this one here. And it's mostly keywords, and then the main focus of the generated image is going to be the first part. So let me paste this in here. I have a notepad file which I've been using to kind of keep track of prompts that I know work that yield interesting results, and then I'll switch out different parts of the parameters to kind of dial in what I want. And so I have no idea if how this format's going to work because I haven't done a particular type of stream like this. I know AI is a bit of a controversial topic right now as far as in the art community and the kind of legitimacy of creating art using these AI tools. The way I see it, it's just another tool. I don't think computers are ever going to fully replace actual artists that create things, but I think learning how to use the tools to do different things is just another way to create something interesting. Now, assuming you're not using a type of AI that's just pulling someone else's work, which, as far as I know, isn't how these things actually generate. They're using information they're given, but it's not like it's taking someone else's picture and just altering it. But if the AI is fed artist style and information that tells them what that style is, then it'll use that to replicate that style. And everything I've read says you can't copyright style. You can copyright a work and an intellectual property, but you can't copyright a style. Someone could say, well, that's very much inspired by so-and-so, and you're kind of ripping off their style, but I don't think you can take someone to court over that. So I think AI is an interesting tool, and I'm curious to see how the technology evolves. I don't think it's going to be the end of art. I just think it's going to result in some different types of art being made. And as long as people can differentiate when something they've created is using an AI tool versus hiring someone, I think that's the most important thing. There's some projects that I'm working on in the future that I'm really considering using some of this AI stuff for, because it allows me to generate things that are outside of my normal skill set and I could use for projects. So we'll see. Starlight said using pixels to make pixel. Yeah, you're pretty much basically you're doing like a computer commission, if that makes sense. You're telling the computer what you want it to draw, and you're trying to give it as much information as possible so that it draws it. And then kind of the fun of using AI is figuring out how the computer thinks and how to tweak the prompts to get what you want. And updating minor parts of the text prompt and captions, seeing how it changes your generated image, and then seeing how it gets close to the results you want. And so we'll start off with this prompt I have here. The main part here is this goddess of the black ink. I don't know if this is a reference to something. I googled it, and it's not like a property as far as I could tell. Like it's not a comic or an anime or something like that, I don't think. I think this is just a reference to the actual subject of the piece. And then it might be a little bit difficult to see, but hopefully it's clear on the broadcast. These terms here: fantasy, intricate, elegant, highly detailed, digital painting, concept art, sharp focus. These are just specific parameters and things that are thrown in here to tell the AI how to refine the image. And a bunch of these I hadn't seen before. Like I've seen HQ, high quality, HD, 8K, 4K, photorealistic. There's a whole bunch of other ones like referencing ArtStation or a bunch of other things you can throw in that will tweak the image. But we'll keep this base one down and we'll see what it spits out, because just messing around with this got me some really cool results that I'm just going to use for wallpapers at some point. On the right, we have the dimensions of the image in pixels, width, height. Since I'm using these for just desktop background wallpapers, I'm kind of getting it close to like a 1024 by 768, maybe a little bit less rectangular resolution. As you increase the size, the scale, and steps. Scale is how much the AI is going to try and match the prompt. We'll keep it at 15 for now. Steps is how many steps generating or gathering data to create the image. And the higher you go, the more steps it'll take to create. We'll keep it at 90. And the more you up these parameters, the more this credits per image goes up. And this is what deducts from the quote-unquote membership that you pay for. And it's 1,000 credits to start for $10. So generating with this prompt and these settings deducts 11. Again, I think it's a really fascinating tool, so that's why I decided to buy it. If you just create an account with Google, I believe it gives you 200 for free. And then after that expires, you either need to put a new email address in there or purchase an actual set of the credits. So let's see what this spits out. It'll take a little bit for it to actually generate. But messing around with this particular tool generates things at a bit higher quality and resolution than the other one I showed you folks that we used to actually do the drawings. That one, the Crayon AI, I think they're still in the process of building it out, and it's still a really neat tool. This one is a lot more powerful from what I've seen. Stable diffusion is a standard for a lot of these programs. But we'll see how this prompt works, because it doesn't generate the same image every time. Ooh. That's really cool. There's a lot going on in that image. see, it looks like I could see one face, obviously one face here, one face here. Something else is cut off at the top. And this is another eye in the background. The results here look like a very, very detailed digital painting. I guess it could also be like a pen or pencil on paper drawing, but it's very, very detailed. And it is mostly grayscale except for the eyes, which is interesting. That's pretty cool. I'm going to save that one. Oh, interesting. They changed the file format? This thing used to output to ping. Now it's outputting to JPEG. I wonder if I could save it as a ping. Yeah, I guess that works. Oh. I didn't even know you could zoom. How do I zoom out? Well, well, we're zoomed in a little bit closer. So again, using the prompt that we plugged in here without adding any other parameters, this is what it spits out. And if we do things like up the steps, like if we went from 50 to 80, we can see how that changes the generation. I already saved this other one, so we're good. And this is part of the experimenting phase for messing around with the AI tools. And I've spent hours just tweaking and changing prompts and swapping stuff in and experimenting. It's, again, to me, it's fascinating how it works. All right, what we got? Oh, interesting. It didn't really change the image. In fact, sometimes when you change the parameters here on the right slightly, it won't give you a completely new image, but it'll change a couple minor things with the image itself. Like, I'm kind of burning credits here, but that's okay. I bought the stacks purely to play around with here on the stream. So if you take the scale, and again, the scale here is how close the AI is trying to match its results to all the parameters in the prompt here. So if we take this and put it all the way up to 20, let's see how it changes. And if it doesn't change dramatically, then we can look at the actual prompt itself. And what I think I'll do for the stream today to sort of keep the process a little bit more original is I'm not going to use any specific artist references this time. I have in the past, and that really does tweak how the image comes out. Maybe I'll demonstrate one of them just to show, but for the sake of the experiment, I'll mostly keep it without reference. Okay. That did change the image a bit. It actually kind of pared it down to just these two female characters, and instead of it being kind of this really intricately textured background of patterns and whatnot, it primarily focused on the hair, and then these butterflies. It looks like there's a kind of a forest type effect with the hair, and then it actually fleshed out the torsos, the upper torsos of each of the models here, whereas before they're very obscured. You couldn't really make out details below the neck. It looked like they're kind of lost in this sea of texture. So upping the scale sort of pared down the focus to just two female characters with these headdress things, and then all of the stuff in the back is a bit more of a backdrop. Like, I think there's way more hair here than is normally possible, and it put this interesting pattern on the eyes. Sometimes, depending on the prompt, the generation gets the eyes right, and sometimes it makes these kind of unusual patterns or textures, but the faces themselves are generated pretty consistently. I've noticed that this one does faces pretty well. Sometimes it gets confused with hands. You get some really interesting humanoid models with unusually shaped hands sometimes, depending on the parameters. But let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. We'll drop this down. I don't think it made a huge difference. We'll put it to 15. If I add reference to an artist, then it's going to change how this thing generates. And we'll see just how much. Again, for the sake of showing off how the technology works, we'll do this here. So one of my favorite artists is H.R. Giger. Being a big fan of the Xenomorph and Alien franchise. That dude's work is just crazy to look at if you look at his art collections. So if we take that and run it through with the same parameters, this Goddess of the Black Ink main prompt, all these other things here, and we just add the artist reference, see how it changes the way it generates. I didn't bother saving this particular one. It's interesting, but it's not dramatically different. Yeah, I agree, Iconic. H.R. Giger's stuff is very unique, very detailed, and disturbing at the same time. Let's see what the AI does with that reference. Whoa. Okay. Well, that it definitely took the artist reference and ran with it. I think hopefully this doesn't get me in trouble. Let's as I'm gonna say move my browser source, but that's okay. There's no actual nudity here. Twitch, don't ban me. But look at how it changed the focus. The style from before was very kind of drawn and painterly and very detailed. Still black and white, grayscale, but outright you weren't seeing a whole lot of reference to another artist's style. Putting in H.R. Giger changes it dramatically. We now have this kind of alien, organic looking, like these Medusas almost, with these alien headgear things, and still hair, lots of hair. This particular prompt seems to really focus on the texturing of the hair, but now you get this sort of like biomechanical, organic texturing. That's a really cool image. I'm going to save that. Let's do one more, but I'm going to change it to God. Let's see if it'll generate a male model and see how much it changes. We'll go ahead and move on. If we linger on this image too much, I'm a little bit afraid I'm going to get banned. I also think we could potentially take this main prompt and then change out the reference to black ink and just make it color, and see if the AI takes it and makes it a non-grayscale image. Whoa. Whoa, look at that. Oh, that's wild. I like that one too. Again, the reference, the artist reference is very strongly represented here, and it does skew the generation of the image heavily in that direction. This one's a little bit harder to sort of discern. I can't tell. I think it's mostly one subject. Over here on the right, we have this kind of alien creature. This is the god reference, I guess. And then it's like very mechanical with these pipes and whatnot, and the way they're textured. Almost looks like a suit, or kind of like a sarcophagus, an alien sarcophagus, kind of encasing something, but very much on brand for the reference. I guess this could be someone over here too. This looks kind of like a helmet or a mask. And this is like a large body that's sort of meshed together. This generation seems to always put at least two models, or two discernible models, in the actual generation, which is interesting. Okay. I want to do one more reference here. Another one of my favorite artists is a fellow named Stephen Gammell. And if you know his work, he did the illustrations for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Very kind of painterly, detailed, but very horror themed type of art style. It's pretty unique. You'd know it when you saw it. But let's see what this does to the AI generation. If we take out the reference and swap in this one, we'll see if the AI is smart enough to figure out the style nuances and see how it changes. And then from here, we'll take the artist reference out and start messing with the references to the parameters and see if we can get color. And then from there, we'll move on to maybe doing a prompt from the ground up. All right, that's interesting. The style has gone in a completely different direction now. That's really cool. This time we're given pretty much one primary subject, not a lot of background, but a ton of detail, like an insane amount of detail. I'm gonna save that. I like the way that looks. We'll dissect that in a sec. Oh, hold on. This definitely running with the idea of this god of the black ink, fantasy. We have kind of like just a headshot from the neck up of this creature, and here's an eye. So this is definitely like a face or a head, and then the mouth is down here. So it's kind of like a alien dragon Cthulhu-esque creature, but it's made up of this really finely detailed, like root texture and all of these individual parts. It's a really crazy composition piece. Like someone drew this, and it looks like it's a pencil or charcoal on paper type drawing. This would take like weeks, I imagine, to draw. There's just so much detail. It's very cool. And it looks like there's a flying creature up here that it's trying to eat. this kind of highly detailed texture is one of the things indicative of Gamel's style. It actually isn't really super close to his style. It takes kind of that idea of detail and it's running in a different direction because he doesn't draw stuff like this, but I could see the inspiration. But yeah, that's a wicked drawing. Need a cover of a metal album. So let's change the reference here. We're gonna call it God of the Color Ink. And over here, let's add full color as a parameter. And we'll take out the reference. So this is going to kind of reset the focus. I have no idea what's going to spit out if we do this. Actually, no, wait. I want to do one generation with the artist reference. We'll keep Gamel in here. And then we'll take it out. And I'm curious to see if we get a colorized version that's similar to this, or if we add the color reference and then full color here, if it completely alters how the computer is going to generate the image. So we'll see. Another option you have with the parameters on the right here, you can generate multiple images at once if you want to see how many different ways the computer attacks the prompt. I'm doing it one at a time because I want to be able to switch the generation prompts after each one and then not burn as many credits that way. I kind of like the idea of doing subtle tweaks and then generating a new image than doing like a shotgun batch. But I have used that before. Whoa. Okay, so obviously the computer takes this combination of prompts and wants to do like a neck up, or like just above the shoulder blades up reference to whatever character or creature it's designing here. But it definitely dialed in the features and gave us a more human type face-ish, kind of like a tree man. You can see a beard, there's actual beard, and this part here, I don't know if this is like a piercing or like this looks like a hook being held in the mouth. And then the color aspect actually gave us splashes of reds and some yellows mixed in, and then the head kind of looks like it's wearing a helmet, or there's like another mouth coming out here. Iconic says looks like a metal album cover. Yeah, this definitely looks like a metal album cover, like a folk metal or like a death metal album cover. I like that one. I'm gonna save that one too. It's just a really interesting change in the style with just a couple parameters, and I think that's pretty neat. I wonder if we take the artist reference out and leave the color references in. I wonder if it's going to go back to the kind of head-on render shots where it was showing us kind of like a person looking at us dead on, and giving it more like a kind of walled texture. I wonder if the artist reference is what's causing it to do this sort of neck up. So we'll leave the God reference, color, full color, and see what it generates now. Because part of what's interesting about messing around with these prompts is figuring out which prompt is affecting how it draws. Because if I were to generate it again, I'm pretty sure the computer would spit out a very similar image to the one that we just generated if we changed nothing and had it run it again. So the trick to playing around with it is saying, okay, if I swap this out, is this the one that changed things to the last angle or style? And kind of manipulating the way the AI is generating stuff that way is a really fun process. I think it's pretty neat. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. The artist reference was definitely what was giving us that angle, because we haven't done this combination yet where we had the reference to the God of Color Inc. and then full color. But now it has gone in a completely different direction with no artist reference whatsoever and given us what looks like a JRPG villain final form. That's fascinating. The paint style and texturing is nuts. I think this is supposed to be the face. It's either got two heads or a mask. And here's the torso. Here's one arm. I think this is another arm, and like the lower body here. That's crazy. Like, look at how much different the style changed with the introduction of references to color. I like that. It's so radically different from the others. I'm going to save that one. Saralad said, looks like a Mayan god or something. Yeah, I get real Amano Yoshitaka vibes from the way this is drawn. He's the dude that did a lot of the old Final Fantasy drawings. They were very kind of sketchy and a lot of detail and really interesting kind of proportions and expressions. Amano's style, this is what it reminds me of. It's more colorful and more painterly, but this looks like something you'd see in like a Final Fantasy game. That's a crazy concept. Almost looks like a wind god of some sorts. You see all this kind of billowing, furled stuff over here. And then it just creates this pattern. And it looks like it's kind of a fiery background. The texturing. Like this thing is walking through the depths of hell, creating all these wind currents. Very neat. So now the question is, if we change the reference back to goddess, what kind of female character is it going to do based on these prompts? And is it going to still keep this particular style, or is changing the reference to goddess instead of god going to cause it to generate things completely differently? So we'll find out. And I'm going to be real quick on the new tab button in case this spits out something a little bit too spicy. Okay, I think that's a little borderline, I think. Let's... Wish I could just resize my window. That is interesting. It went in a completely different direction, but kept the painterly style. Face is a little bit unusual on this one. The eyes are a little bit off-centered by a slight amount, and the patterning on the inside is really weird. But it is again, very billowy. Very billowy, very multicolored. Oh, that's not bad. Sorry, said it's on a thin line. Yeah, let's just let's move on. I'll save that one. That's kind of a cool reference. As far as I know, the AI is coded to not do like full-on nudity or anything. I actually, honestly, haven't messed around with that since the internet's gonna do that plenty on its own, I'm sure. But I've never seen this thing spit out like a fully like topless model or anything like that. I guess we'll have to see. If I see something that's definitely over the line, I gotta be quick to jump out. So let's change the focus now and start messing around with something that I want to try and lock down for a future project. I'm gonna say a futuristic cityscape. Let's say technology. Keep elegant, highly detailed. Digital painting, concept art, sharp focus, illustration on HK. Because I want to do sort of a shot of like a futuristic cityscape. I'm working on something for next year. It's a way down the road project, but let's see if we can get something that's. This is going to be a pretty radical departure. This shouldn't show any actual models. We want an actual backdrop, like a background. Ooh, that's pretty cool. I wasn't sure if it was going to show kind of more of a generalized shot, because I could say city street, which would look like you're going down like the busy city street. We can try that too, but this one definitely goes the painterly route. But look at the lighting. There's a lot of detail and then not detail. It looks like you're looking through the heart of like a city square. Or you could think of it like a high-speed exposure shot where it's capturing activity over a certain amount of time, and all it's blurred is things moving around, and you're kind of zoomed a little bit further out. That's neat. I like that. Might be a little bit bright for what I was thinking. I was looking for something that's kind of more like neon lit at night. But that's definitely a cool result. It looks like an alien city. With all these kind of towers and spires and these lights. In the back, this is sort of. I thought this was the moon at first, but I think this is supposed to be kind of like arcing electricity between these spires, because it's not circular. It looks more like electric current way up here, and then we have kind of this fade out in the back. Very cool. I like the blue. This over here in the foreground could be like a car if you were looking at it from a perspective of right alongside the car, and it's moving down the streets. But the scale is a little bit hard to sort of discern because we don't see any people. There's no actual rendered people here. So what we could do is we could call, let's say, futuristic city street with dozens of faceless people. Iconic says, I got to go as my bro wants to hang out and it's his birthday. Sorry I couldn't stay longer. Take care. All right, Iconic. Thanks for popping in and saying hi. I hope you and your bro have fun on his birthday. But I will definitely catch you later. So have yourself a good evening. And Iconic is hitting me with a hydrate on the way out. Will do. Okay, futuristic city street with dozens of faceless people walking. Let's see how that changes the prompt. I wonder how it's going to change the focus. So we'll find out. In the meantime, I see Sarah just redeemed a stretch. Oh, my back. Oh, we've been at this almost an hour. Time flies. Let me know what you think of this particular format for experimenting around with the AI drawings. I think this stuff is neat to talk about. If people think the results are interesting, then I'd be definitely down to do this again. Whoa. Okay. All right. So, keeping the painterly style, and again, this is very futuristic. And we actually have more of a focus on streets, direction, and people. The AI has painted in these kind of rough representations of all sorts of different types of people. They're not that clearly defined, but they're very present in the composition. And we actually have two streets, one going this way and one going this way. And it looks almost like everything is sort of being pulled motion wise in each direction, maybe more so this direction on the right than the left. And things are sort of motion blurring. It's almost like you're being physically pulled in the direction down here, and everything's starting to kind of distort as you're going. But it's a really interesting mix of colors. We have this kind of low purplish hue around all of the windows, and this looks like kind of an evening. Sun is starting to go down, dusk type setting, versus the other one, which kind of looked more like a night shot, just a brightly lit night shot. This looks like something you would use as a concept pitch for a video game environment. You know, if you're trying to design, like, let's say a futuristic third-person exploration game, and you said, we want to set up kind of the city corridors or the city map to look in this way. This is like a rough sketch or like a painterly type way of representing, okay, here's what the environment might look like, with all the people walking around, and then the buildings and architecture style. Let's save that. That's pretty neat. Neat way of showing that. That's very different from the other one. And I think it's kind of neat how you can't see the specific features in a lot of the buildings. Like, there's patterning and lighting, but there's no signs. There's no clearly defined signage. You can see some sort of on the storefronts here, which is kind of neat. If you look at the windows, look real close. But there's no billboards or big scrolling displays. I've seen that on some prompts. But on this one, it's all sort of blended in, and it's more focused on kind of the composition and the people. What if we change this to aliens? Just one word in the prompt. How much does it physically change how it generates? Is it going to give us something similar to this, and then just put like unusual non-humanoid alien creatures in it, or is it going to completely change the angle? I guess we'll see. Interesting. What changed the most was, well, two things changed. The architecture style changed a bit. Now we have these kind of tall, almost spirally looking towers. It's very vertical. Almost looks like cave formations that have lights on them. And we still have the two streets. So it kept the two streets, and now all of the people walking, still people, but instead of looking like regular humans with different regular attire, now they're defined a lot less. You can't tell that they're aliens per se, but it looks almost more like futuristic garb instead of just regular contemporary clothes. And it change how they're dispersed. I can't tell if that's more or less in total than was on the previous version, but the environment is what changed the most there. The people, the style changed and kind of the scale changed, but the people don't really draw the eye. Instead, it's the architecture and then the lighting. Now it is definitely kind of like full-on night with a really strong light source in the back. So I don't know if this would be like the moon lighting up the corridors from behind, or whatnot, but it's a very different vibe versus the previous one. It was very much dusk, early evening, and this is full on night, but it's very brightly lit. Huh. I'm gonna save that one. That's an interesting contrast. All right, let's do one more alteration to the parameters for this particular shot, and then we'll move on to something else for the AI. We'll mess around with this a little bit longer, and then I'm going to switch over to actual drawing. So let's just take the reference to city street out completely. Just make a futuristic city again. This is what we used the very first one, but now we'll keep the. Let's take the faceless out. Let's give a different description of the aliens and see if it pulls the focus into the people away from the actual background and environment. So let's say dozens of horrifying aliens walking around is really going to give it that much more of a change. But let's see if this causes the AI to put some emphasis on the people in the frame and changes the composition. And with these settings and the scale and everything else, 9.5 credits an image. That's fine. Some of the ones I was messing around with earlier in the week were costing me like 20 per because of how detailed they were. That's okay. Okay. So it still kept a city street shot, but it's defined it a little bit more clearly because now you can see people walking around. But the reference to horrifying aliens walking around did virtually nothing to how the AI drew the people. In fact, this group here in the middle sort of fades in the background. It's almost obscured if you don't look at it closely. And yet people kind of walking around. The architecture changed again. Now it's a bit more kind of organic looking, but still this vertical tower type of motif. Like alien high-rise buildings or skyscrapers is what I'm getting here. We have another kind of night shot, but now we have a moon in the back, which is kind of a neat effect. And it's kind of like the light source. And then if you look into the back here, the cityscape continues to go. So this is a really sprawling area that it covers instead of this just being a backdrop with nothing. So we assume the city just goes into the distance. And then in the front, we have kind of like some sort of entryway to a building. This looks like a Star Wars scene or something from a sci-fi video game, like a spaceport. That's what this looks like to me. A spaceport where people are traveling, arriving, or departing. Very cool. It reminds me of the first image in the set for this one that we did. And even though the lighting changed, the palette is still sticking to this sort of washed out blue and purple and kind of magenta pink neon color. That's one thing that's been consistent across all of the images in the set. It's kept the kind of bright color and the same color scheme with all the lighting and lights on stuff, which is interesting. I don't know what causes the AI to do that, but it keeps it the same across all the ones that we generated. Sourlad said, lots of pink and blue lights in future stuff. Yeah, it seems like the AI keeps that as a through line for at least this particular combination of prompts. It likes putting in the pinks, purples, blues. It's very consistent in that manner, which is kind of a neat twist. All right. Let's change the focus of the image again. Sarlad said, maybe it's just the trend is very big and it's just the norm. It's possible that when talking about futuristic settings and environments, the AI has seen a lot of references to this type of color palette. And so it's saying, okay, if I'm supposed to draw a futuristic scene of some sort, it needs to have a bunch of blue, purple, and pink lighting things, because that's quote unquote what future means. Very possible. But instead of a cityscape, let's try and change the focus to the aliens. So if we take the reference out to the city and we just start with dozens of horrifying aliens walking around, is it going to still think of a scene, or is it going to give us actual creatures? And how is it going to composite those against everything else? Are we going to get creatures with a background? Or are we going to get creatures in an actual environment? I have no idea. We'll find out. This is less relevant to a project I'm working on, but it's still something I want to mess around with, because we might get some interesting creature concept designs that we can purpose into something else in the future. The real question is, what does this AI with this combination of parameters think quote unquote horrifying aliens look like? Whoa. Okay. That is interesting. It definitely went the H.R. Giger route again, but I didn't put that as a reference. In fact, there's no artist reference at all in these. These last several we've done have had no references, because I wanted to just see what the AI would generate on its own. But that's cool. If you look at the way everything is sort of positioned, Sarlat said, that will trigger someone's phobia. Possibly. They're very stringy, and this sort of highly detailed texture, it's very Giger-esque, and kind of similar to the more horror themed things that Stephen Gammell draws too. But again, those artists aren't a reference here, so it's not pulling from their style. But we have a large central creature, and then this one looks like it's floating kind of behind and then reaching over. And then we have some other floating ones like this, whatever this is here, and then a bunch of creatures walking around. And it's a little bit hard to tell whether some are kind of superimposed in the distance or attached, like this one right here. I think this one's kind of like a really tall creature with multiple torsos and heads sticking out. I like that. That's really cool. We're basically just creating album covers at this point, and that's fine. And you can see how sorry, that's his Bone Spaghetti Giants. Yeah, it definitely looks very alien. But what's interesting is, just by changing the prompt to reference a focus on creatures instead of a landscape, the whole rest of the composition gets lost completely. The only scene we have is this sort of fog shrouded setting, and then we have these kind of like twin suns or twin moons in the back that it just created and put in there. This looks like a bunch of creatures that are rising up out of the fog, or maybe like a marsh type environment. You can't see it. It's very obscured, and the focus is on all of these alien monster thingies. I wonder if this thing, the AI, is smart enough to know camera reference. So if I said, in relative perspective to the camera, the subject is doing this. I wonder if it's smart enough to render that, thinking, this is the camera or lens of the viewer looking at whatever it is they're looking at. So if I said horrifying aliens lunging towards the camera, I wonder if it will take the whatever creatures and have them sort of dynamically foreshortened and look like they're actively moving towards the viewer. I've never messed with that before. I just thought to try and experiment with that now. We'll see if it works. Because that would be really cool if it shows kind of like a first person perspective of what someone is seeing versus just a static rendered shot in the first person. Hopefully it gives us a different perspective on the creatures too, or maybe different creatures altogether. Huh. Interesting. It does not really take into account the relative perspective of the quote unquote camera. We got a lot more creatures though. There's an uncomfortable amount of creatures here. I do like the way that looks. And the style's different. It looks like a whole swarm of whatever these things are, and they're on the move. The texturing is still Giger-esque. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's the alien. Maybe it's the fact this is Alien. It's thinking like Alien, trademark Alien, the Xenomorph. Maybe it's doing... Maybe that's why all these are having that sort of textured look to them. Let's try this. Call them alien monsters lunging towards the... Camera didn't seem to change the perspective. Let's say if we say viewer, if the AI says, okay, the person looking at this thing, it needs to be perspective relevant to the person who's viewing the image. And let's see if going alien monsters changes the style and gets us something different instead of, again, the kind of HR Giger-ish look, which is cool. But I get the feeling the word alien was what was causing it to focus that way. Also interesting that the color scheme seems to be consistent across all of these. It is not grayscale, but the color is very minimal in the palette. Huh. Well, that actually changed very little as far as the style. I think it made it more xenomorphy. It is interesting though. We have less total number of creatures, and it puts a couple in the foreground. Like we got one fella here who doesn't look like... Okay, maybe this is a limb down here. But this fella's also attached to this one right here. So there's kind of two. Maybe this has kind of like an insect-like lower body that we're kind of seeing over here. Interesting. It didn't change the relative perspective to the viewer, so that doesn't really have any bearing. So we can actually take that out. What if we said Instead of reference to alien, extra dimensional beings. Maybe not monsters per se, but some sort of reference to creatures without saying, aliens. Wonder if what it does with the word extra dimensional. I don't know what that would mean. I'm kind of curious as what the AI would do. One of my favorite things to mess around with using this particular tool is creature design. You folks would know from seeing my art streams, I'm a really big creature concept designer. I just like messing around with different ideas for creatures. This particular type of tool is great for that. It does some very interesting things. Huh. Okay. So I think the AI got confused by the word extra dimensional. It created a very landscape type image. This looks like a cave. But I think these things that are sort of rising up from the ground are supposed to be the beings, but it's hard to tell. They're not given any sort of discernible features. So it ends up looking more like a straight landscape shot. But the texturing and lighting is interesting. It's a bit too kind of washed out to me. It's a little bit kind of just bright and everything kind of blurs together. But this could be used as, again, like a backdrop setting or like a concept set piece for like a video game. In some place where you explore. That's interesting. I'm pretty sure the extra dimensional is what's causing that. If we just take it out completely, we just say horrifying beings. We don't give it any specifics as far as monsters, aliens, people, whatnot. We just say beings. If we do that, what does it do? If we wanted to dial back into a specific focus and use an artist reference, I think we would get something a bit more cohesive. But I'm kind of curious to see what the AI, how it connects the dots if you just don't give it information in that regard. What classifies as horrifying, like a subjective term. Huh. Okay. So with this combination of parameters, just saying beings, I think, is what's giving the particular style of this kind of really light texture with the kind of strong light source. That's interesting. I don't know what's going on over here with these strange highlights that are pretty out of place because the color palette is very kind of one, like monotone almost. It's like grayscale, but in like a lightish brown. But we definitely have more defined creatures here. Like this fella right here is the one who's got the most features. But you notice that one thing it did consistently is it has them sort of rising out of the ground. The previous one you could kind of interpret as having weird rock formations or these things rising up. This one kind of builds on that a little bit further, and these things are basically just like an elemental, a summoned elemental, just rising up out of some sort of plane or the floor itself, and they have this wispy, almost hair-like texture, which is also interesting. I do like that one. That one is different. A very different vibe. And with the light source in the back, it still kind of looks like we're underground. But we're underground with some sort of light source that's shining through, either from above or behind. So a bit, still kind of reminds me of a subterranean cave, because you can see like a ceiling here and all these different patterns and walls. But there's like a part that breaks through, allows the moon here to kind of shine through. That's pretty neat. All right, let's look at one last type of shot. And this is relevant to something I was working on for future project. I want a castle or like a medieval fantasy type backdrop. This is something I've been experimenting around with, so I got to kind of remember the prompts. But we're going to use this intricate, elegant, highly detailed digital kind of painting set of prompts because it's yielded some interesting results. So what if we said a medieval kingdom in a valley, and we keep all these other ones here, full color, HQ, HD, whatnot. What kind of backdrop are we going to get? Are we going to get something like a bird's eye view? Or are we going to get kind of a more isometric look of like a Dark Souls type thing? I don't know. I haven't done this combination before. We'll find out. I think I mentioned this before, but another thing that I'm looking to have in the community Discord when it eventually goes live, there's going to be a section for AI images, and I'll probably every once in a while drop interesting ones that I've created in there just so people can see them, and I'll be like a place for people to post their results or just have like a gallery of stuff, because again, I like messing around with this tool. It's really neat. We got, huh? Okay, that's not what I was expecting, but that's an interesting shot. It's like we're looking out at a kingdom, but from underneath a tree in the foreground. That's what this part is here. It's either we're looking out from under a tree, like we're standing right at its base, the roots and stuff here, or we're looking through a cave, that like the mouth of a cave that opens out into this big mountainous valley with these misty mountaintops, and then the actual buildings kind of built into the hillside of the mountain. It's like a mountain kingdom type thing. That's pretty cool. That looks like the cover of a fantasy book. And I can't tell if this is supposed to be people or objects in the foreground. We don't really have people walking around. Okay, we'll keep that one. What if we change kingdom to castle? Let's see, with towers. See if we can get something that's going to be a bit more like a main castle set piece as opposed to smaller buildings. This definitely reflects the kingdom, but if we want to just focus on the castle itself, I wonder if changing the reference there will dial it in a lot more. Not exactly sure why it took a second for it to actually spit the result out. Could be this combination of prompts. But we'll see. We'll see if it changes the perspective too. If it gives us a different frame for whatever it is we're looking at. It definitely does. So we're no longer looking out from underneath something that's bordering the frame of the image. Kept the same color palette, and the whole idea of kind of a castle set in a mountainous kind of hill area. But now we have definitely a focus on the castle itself. The towers, yeah, they definitely went a little bit crazy with the towers here. But now we're kind of looking at it from a hillside. Kind of, if we were walking down a path that's heading towards whichever the front end of this thing is. It doesn't have gates. But if you look at the way it's sort of situated, we have kind of like the broad side of the hill, and then these towers in the back are actually built into the mountain. You can see here, this tower looks like it's blending in with the mountain, almost as if the mountain grew around the towers. And then the rest is sort of set in to the face of it. That's kind of cool. I don't know from an architectural standpoint how that would work, but it's kind of a neat idea. This also looks like it'd be the backdrop to a fantasy novel. I'm going to change the reference here to grayscale. Oh, it could be the valley reference, which is giving us this sort of mountain surroundings. That would make sense. Change the setting to be on top of a mountain, and we're going to make it grayscale. Let's see if this changes the style of the architecture and the actual setting. After we're done messing around in this sort of medieval tower cityscape set of parameters, we'll switch over to actual drawing. We will do that for the remainder of the stream here. I could do this for hours. I have spent quite a bit of time just tinkering around with the prompts and seeing what this thing spits out. Ooh, okay. Well, the castle doesn't look like it's made out of obsidian, but it's definitely built on top of a mountain instead of looking like it's in a valley. The grayscale gives it a very kind of sketched look, like this was done with pencil or charcoal on like a canvas or paper. I think it's interesting how the surroundings are a lot less defined. It's got kind of these misty mountains that go off in the background, and then everything is just not really that well detailed, and everything's in the foreground. Sorry, that said, looks like something for Berserk, and I like it. Yeah, I definitely get like a Midland Berserk type look from something like this. And if you look at the path, the path would kind of go up this way, and there's more than one castle. Once it gets up here, there's one castle on this peak, and another one on this part, and then more built into the face of the mountainside. So it's interesting. It looks like a a mountain kingdom. Very cool. Let me see if I can save this. I like that just changing the reference to the color sort of shifts the mood of the overall piece pretty considerably. It has a very different feel from the previous one. And if we were to take artist references and plug them in here, I'm not going to do that for this for now. But if we were to take other artists and plug in their names, the way the AI would draw everything, the landscape composition, buildings, would take into account the artist that we're referencing. And if they're a person who does really complex backgrounds, that would become the focus. I don't know if we put like, H.R. Giger in here, how it would change. I guess we can see real quick. We'll do this as the last iteration of this. I don't know if it's going to give us like an alien castle or if it's just going to slightly change. I don't know. We'll find out. And another thing you can do, which also changes the way the AI sort of takes your prompts and tries to create something, you can put a billion different artists in there. In fact, I think the more you add, the more it's going to flesh out the complexity. And so I've been keeping a list of artists I like that are interesting and just trying combinations of their names, all, none, or some, just to see how it changes. And it yields some pretty interesting results. Just adding another name, for example, drastically changes how it generates. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. Adding H.R. Giger's name in here does not really change it doesn't really change the architecture style. A little bit in kind of the texturing is slightly different. Like the texturing on the bricks and the actual masonry changes a little, but it's not like I would pull his particular art style out of this image. I think if you're doing creatures, organic things, and you're plugging in his name, you're going to see a lot more influence versus scenes and architecture. But it is neat how just that reference changes the style. It's a lot more detailed and just an entirely different type of feel. Still the idea of a mountainside castle, since that's the parameter down here. The obsidian thing doesn't really come into play. Again, I think that's a non-factor here. But now it looks more like a kind of gothic castle, which is interesting. This looks like a backdrop for a Castlevania game. A couple of things that I've managed to create look like they should have been the background for the latest Castlevania with the logo and the text on it. Very cool. This looks like it was also sketched. I can't imagine how long it would take someone to sketch something like this. So much detail and shading and, well, just the shading itself. But yeah, pretty neat. So that's a real quick look at the Dream Studio AI Stable Diffusion drawing program. I think they're constantly tweaking and updating and adding information to how this thing works. And so I'm going to keep messing around with it just from a concept perspective and seeing what kind of cool stuff I can create. If people find this particular type of stream interesting, where we just sit down and tweak different parameters and see what results come out, I'm down to do this again. In fact, like I said, I could do this for like a full 3 hours. It's just fascinating to me. I am a little bit concerned that some of the prompts might get me in trouble. Like, I'm actually surprised that one with the lady didn't flag anything, but it's art. It's not supposed to be explicit content, so maybe that was why. But even outside of that, creature design is so cool. and there's many different things. So I don't know. Give me feedback. If this is something you want me to do again, let me know. But let me go ahead and switch over to Clip Studio. We'll get that loaded up, and then we'll do some work on original stuff for the remainder of the stream today. And I do not know which one I want to work on. Let's load up the last character one. Maybe, so we don't get too far down the rabbit hole, we'll do sketches. Let's see. This the one we did last time? Yes. Okay. So let's hide you. And where is my now drawing? We'll just keep character study. We did 4 sketches before, I think. No, 3 sketches. I think we did 4, 5, and 6. This coat one right here was the last one. This is the male model outfits sketches that we were doing. Let's spend some more time doing a couple more of these for the remainder of our time together today. And then that should give us enough, so if next time we come back to the character study, we can actually go in and start doing the line art, coloring, shading, and everything else for fully realized drawing. We've not quite gotten there with the male model yet. But real quick, I'm going to go fry some chicken. I'll leave everything here. The BGM should still be playing. I can't hear it because I turned my headphones down. Yeah. Should be playing, so I'm going to leave everything right here, and I'll be back in 1 minute, and we'll pick up with the character study. All right. Let me get my tablet into position here. So I knew I was going to be doing this on stream today. I got my camera and everything set up so that I just have to slide my tablet into position. And just have to move my mic around. There we go. All right, so we want number 7. Ah, there's a reference. Yep. Okay. So now let's see what sort of ideas we can mess around with for another outfit for our male subject here. Oh, I need to change my caption. I wasn't sure what specifically to use when we were messing around with the AI. I consider that art, but I noticed some people when they're doing that, they've used just chatting. So we'll go ahead and change it to art officially now. Actually, one of the through lines that we've talked about for this particular character in the different sessions we've done in character study is that the race of character that we're using here has a style of clothing and armor that is very insect or bug-like. It is pretty common in the design and the different design elements to have this sort of plated shell-like texture with all of these stones like you see here inset into the different parts of garments or armor pieces. So we're going to kind of roll with that a little bit and see what kind of permutations on that we can do. Maybe one that's cuts off a little bit lower. Kind of thinking more like a cut-off torso guard. Not like a vest per se, but these other ones which are more like full armor pieces. Maybe something that's a bit more like a lightweight type deal. We have kind of like an undershirt, maybe like a heavy material shirt underneath right here. Maybe something that cuts off right below the shoulder. And keeping the idea of things that have kind of like a shell-like plating, we could look at the texturing on the body armor itself. Because I think one of the ones we did, yeah, like this one right here, we have plates going down, sort of like a V, like this. So let's see if we can come up with something that looks a little bit different. But still keeping the idea of like a shell-like texture. Maybe we can add a section where it cuts off right before the sleeves. Like so. Now, for the arms, to sort of set this one apart from these other two, the more recent two entries, I think we'll have the arms be uncovered up to the gloves and do kind of like a maybe an armored gauntlet type deal from here on down. Maybe something like this. Maybe we could shorten it up a little. We'll definitely have to come to a decision on kind of the build and musculature for the character, but for the sake of outfits, that's not really gonna be too big a deal right now. We'll shade in this just so I don't forget if I end up using this one that we've got the shirt cutting off here. Now, lower body. We could go for, instead of having like a full torso guard and a lower armor piece like we've done in these last two, we could scale it back a little bit and then do like a belt, a textured belt like this. This would actually be the same color as the shirt. And we can go straight into like the kind of pants fatigue type deal. But let's go all the way down to the boots here. Kind of more like a cut-off armored boot. It's higher here, and we have the pants come all the way down like that. That'll be different from that first one. You could do something like this for the shoes. Kind of these armored shoes. Let me fix the angle here. I think I want to do some sort of detail or pattern work on these fatigues so they don't just look like loose fitting baggy pants. We'll worry about that in a sec. So we can define these a little bit better here on the boots. All right, let's add some contouring or texturing to the actual pants themselves. Let's be like a thick protective material as opposed to just fabric. We'll add these sort of kind of contour things here to show that it's not just cloth. Let's think about adding this sort of lower accessory, kind of like a not like an additional belt, but more like a utility thing that could carry ammo or something else. And we can add the other arm. We'll do the same sort of gauntlet glove type deal, make it symmetrical. Okay. Let me zoom out a little bit and do some cleanup and compare this one to the other concepts. I did sketch this one out a little bit quickly. Make sure that doesn't get blended in too much here. All right. So this is number 7. If we compare this one to the previous 2, 5 and 6, number 7 is a little bit less armored. Probably the least of these 3. Oh, when did those 2 redeems come in? I wasn't looking at the screen I wasn't looking at chat for about 10 minutes. Let me see. Just now. Okay. Just making sure I didn't miss them from earlier. I will add some water. And shoulders, my back. But yeah, I think this one's a possibility. This would definitely be a good alternate costume. Yeah, I got you, Sarah Lad. I could check the redeem queue and make sure, they weren't hanging out there for half an hour. See, I got you. Yeah, I think 7 would make a potentially good alt costume. If we look at 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's kind of similar to 2. I think style-wise, the amount of covering-wise, it's most like 2, and then obviously these other ones sort of play around with the different design elements we've talked about so far. So I think before we wrap up for today, I want to do one more. I mentioned in one of the previous streams that having 8 possibilities for outfit ideas would probably give us enough choices that we can go in there and choose which one we want to start with to do the actually fully rendered out and realized character concept. Sarah, let's say 7 looks like something from Resident Evil or a fighter. Yeah, I definitely get kind of more of a lightweight fighting type of garment as opposed to these other ones which are more like heavy combat armor. Looking for something that kind of bridges the gap between the two. I don't know which particular approach I like the most. I'll have to think about that for the final. But I definitely think this particular character is some sort of fighter, or maybe someone who's in the military or law enforcement or something. Some sort of combat-oriented role, which is definitely sort of flowed into the drawings themselves. So we will keep running with that theme. Charlotte said rogue. I don't know, D&D stuff. Yeah, that could be a possibility too. One thing that's might not be apparent as far as the setting for the character, this particular character, it's supposed to be time-wise and setting-wise supposed to be more futuristic as opposed to like fantasy themed. It's more futuristic and sci-fi, since the whole setting for this universe that I've been working on is definitely set in like a far, far future. And so you're looking at kind of high levels of technology and whatnot, kind of worked into the ideas of all these armors. And so that's kind of one of the through lines for the designs, and it just kind of depends on how it all shakes out. Like, they're not supposed to look like robots per se, but kind of more like futuristic armor-ish type stuff is what I'm going for. And we'll see when we ultimately figure out the one we're gonna use, which one kind of reflects that the most. Because this character is from the same sort of universe and setting as the female one, but different race. Different race of people, hence the different styles to the clothing. Alright, maybe we go far end of the extreme on this one, and we do like an actual like heavy armor style. Let's see what that gives us. Can't tell if this is going to be completely covering the mouth. There's not going to be a facial features being drawn in here, but it's kind of what I'm going for with this one. We'll see how it pans out. I'm messing around with the sort of texturing and patterning here on the chest piece. Again, gonna kind of go for some more out there ideas for this, and we'll see what it looks like. Sorry, it said getting aquatic armor vibes. Yeah, I need to be a little bit careful with that. I might have to mess around with some of the texturing and plating a little bit more so it doesn't look quite so scaly. We want to keep to the whole idea of like a shell-like plating. So I'm either going to need to add more texturing or change the way some of the patterns look, I think. But we'll see. We're spitballing here and just trying to see what sticks as far as a cohesive design for this particular character. Maybe we could do something like this. if we make the shoulder parts a little bit less pronounced and actually work on like a shoulder guard type deal, that might look a little bit better. This one's going to probably end up looking very busy as far as all the patterns and texturing. Then we might have to go and start paring it down later. We'll kind of just put everything in there for now and then see how we want to edit it and then kind of refine it. That's usually the way I do like concept sketches. I'll put everything together and then make the tweaks as I want to start adding or removing stuff. Didn't really like the way that sort of scuffed looked on the chest plate. Almost made it look like whiskers. Not what I was going for. That might be a little bit too much. Something like that will work out a little bit better. One thing we'll sit down and look at for this particular character concept once we get there is color paletting. Got some ideas for the basic colors for like the character's hair and whatnot, but also for the armor / clothing, since there are some pretty standard palettes this particular race's outfits tend to fall under. In addition to style and design elements in the clothing and armor, there are typically some color palettes that each one uses. We talked a bit about that with the female character, so when we get there with this one in the future, we'll talk about that some more. I'm gonna change that patterning a little bit. We'll add this sort of ridged plating here. That's something I haven't done on a lot of the arm and leg pieces. We've done that on the torso parts. But that is something that's pretty common. I need to remember to include for some of these armor concepts. Okay. Let's move on to the lower torso. We're not going to go quite as aggressive on this thing like on this model. Maybe something that's scaled down a bit. Or we could even have it not be like an armored piece and just have it be like an actual fabric type deal. We could even have some decorative characters on there too. Now for the lower part of the armor that goes towards the legs, I think I do want to have some parts that are coming off of the hips. I don't know what this particular piece of armor type is called, but you see it on a lot of like plate-ish type mail. So we're going to take that kind of idea and run with it here. And the same type of fatigues, like heavy pant type material for the legs, but we'll do sort of like greaves type lower guards, starting at the knee and going on down. It's like about here. Got that same sort of plating texture. Now, what do we want to have on the calf parts and shin guards here? We could do something like this. Instead of having that same plating from up here, run all the way down and have it be kind of redundant, we'll just do these stone inset mineral thingies here. And then we just mirror everything over here on this side. Taking care to capture all the details, because again, we're going symmetrical for pretty much most of these designs. Maybe I'll do one or two tweaks to the alt one if we do an alt to have it be asymmetrical, but that is a common thing for this particular style for this race. They do like their symmetry for whatever reason. And for the shoes, maybe make these a bit more sharp and angular. These decorative parts here at the bottom. Like so. Maybe we can move this one a little further back. Down here. Oh, we need to do the other arm. Before we finish up, we'll just mirror these sort of arm shoulder pieces, and we can call it good. Add the plating at the edges. Yeah, just like that. Starlight said, like the addition of the cloth. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a contrast from the rest of the outfit, which is just very armored, and very like heavy plated, armored, shell like. And then you have this cloth part here, which is a bit more decorative. The writing here is meant to be kind of like painted on different characters from the writing system, this particular group. All right, let's hide the reference. And let's compare this one to the other one. I think it's pretty functional. We've kind of got a building theme here with slight variations. So this is number 8. Again, for 5, 6, 7, and 8, kind of focusing on the armored aspect. 7 sort of diverges, and you have much less covering and obscuring designs, which I think works well for contrast. I still don't know which one I like the most, though. Kind of like number 6. Number 6 with the coat is kind of the most striking as far as outfit style. Here, let me scoot over here. Nope. There we go. Five isn't bad. I almost like the arm pieces on 8 better than 5 and 6. What if potential idea might be taking the arm pieces from 8 and putting them on 6? Like, we look here, this particular part on the shoulder, it's a little bit unusual. I had trouble with that part. I redrew it, I think, 5 times when we were doing this last time. So I don't know. I think 6 with some tweaks or revisions before the final part of the process might be the way to go. So if I was going to do that, I could always take 6 and then just sketch out some last minute changes to things like the arms. And then go forward and do the line art, coloring, shading, and whatnot. So, you know, I haven't saved once since I've been doing this. So I'm going to save now. It'd be a real shame to lose 7 and 8. I've been working on them for the last, hour and change. All right. Well, I think we are well on our way. Hopefully next time we work with the male character, we can actually finish the drawing and have a fully realized, colored and shaded design. The ultimate goal is to basically have a character sheet that has maybe a couple different fully realized and rendered versions of outfits, so that if we were going to say, okay, how are we going to put this character into a story, we have different options for the look. We could choose a face and hairstyle, which is why I had up there briefly this. And then from there, it's just choosing the outfits. It's a shame I don't draw in a manner that lets me do a lot of these very quickly with kind of simplistic details, but that's all right. I'm not in any particular rush. But I think that will do it for the drawing stream today. I think the AI stuff was fun. I liked messing around with that, so hopefully you folks found it interesting. I'd be definitely down to do that more for like a dedicated stream in the future, where maybe we kind of put our brains together and come up with some ideas for things to have the AI draw. the whole idea of playing with the prompts and whatnot has yields some fascinating results. Maybe in the next session, if I have some extra time, I can pull up like a slideshow style and show you folks some of the other stuff I've created using the different settings. I think that could be fun too, because we saw like a snippet today, but there's a whole folder of stuff that I have just saved. But before we jump off, let me see if there's anyone from the homie crew that's online. I'm a little bit early. On a Saturday. Let's see. Yatra is online. They're doing just chatting. Oh, I guess we can go raid them. I think I've only been over there a couple times. I don't know that VTuber super well, but we'll go ahead and raid Yatra. Sarlat said the AI showed a lot of beautiful art. Yeah, it's nuts, man. Just seeing how that technology is evolving, it's gonna yield some cool stuff. I just think going forward, we'll have to find a way to make it so that it doesn't interfere with people's ability to do art for a living, right? We'll go ahead and go to outro. Let me pause BGM, and we will go raid Yatra. So, thanks again for hanging out, folks. We'll be back tomorrow for what I'm hoping is the final for Breath of Fire 2. I set aside the block for hopefully as much time as I need to beat the game. Hopefully it won't take super long. But that's the end goal. We're trying and beat Breath of Fire 2 tomorrow. So, until then, I will see you folks later. Have yourselves a good evening.